The sun hung low over the wide Wyoming plains, painting the desert in shades of gold and rust. Dust shimmered in the air like a veil of forgotten dreams, and the wind whispered softly through the dry grass. It was late afternoon, that quiet hour when most travelers had already made camp or found their way home. The road was long, lonely, and cruel to those who had no horse beneath them or no friend beside them. A figure sat hunched by the roadside, an old man, his beard white as chalk dust, his hands trembling over a dented tin cup that hadn't seen water in hours. His clothes were faded beyond color, and his boots had holes worn right through the soles. Folks who passed him, ranchers, travelers, wagoners, all gave him the same kind of glance. The kind you give trouble when you hope it doesn't look back. He asked for nothing now. His lips were cracked and his eyes looked far off. Maybe remembering better days or maybe just too tired to care anymore. The desert had its own way of swallowing the forgotten. Then came the sound of hooves, slow, steady, and sure. A young cowboy rode in from the south, dust curling behind his horse like smoke from a dying fire. His hat shadowed his eyes, but the lines on his sunburned face spoke of miles and mistakes. The horse, a chestnut mare named Daisy, snorted softly as they neared the old man. The cowboy slowed his ride, studying the scene. The man looked like he hadn't eaten in days. The road was cruel to drifters, even crueler to the old. "Evenin', sir," the cowboy said, reining his horse. His voice was calm, low, the kind that made folks listen. The old man blinked up, startled. "Evenin'," he rasped, his voice no more than a whisper. "Don't suppose you got a drink to spare?" The cowboy swung down, reached for his canteen, and handed it over. "Water's the least I can share." The old man took it with both hands, trembling so bad he nearly spilled it. He drank slow, then wiped his beard with the back of his sleeve. "Bless you, boy. Been sittin' here since mornin'. Thought maybe somebody might stop. Lot of folks don't stop no more," the cowboy said, squatting beside him. "Name's Eli Carter." The old man smiled faintly. "Eli, good name. I used to know a boy named Eli long time ago. My name's George." "Where are you headed, George?" The old man looked down the empty road. "Don't rightly know, just away. Seems I've been heading away most of my life." Eli studied him a long moment. Something about the man's eyes caught him, that deep sadness of someone who once had everything and lost it slow, one piece at a time. "Well, George," Eli said finally, "you can't be sitting out here come nightfall. Coyotes don't care how old a man is." George chuckled weakly. "Son, I ain't sure they'd find much meat on me anyhow." Eli smiled. "Still can't leave you here." "You ride?" George shook his head. "Ain't been on a horse in years." "Then I reckon we'll walk Daisy together till we find a camp. There's a creek about a mile east. You can rest there." The old man's lips trembled. "Why you helping me, boy?" "Ain't nobody else stopped." Eli shrugged. "My mama raised me right. She said if you see somebody hurtin' and you got two hands, you use one to lift 'em." As they walked, George told bits of his story. How he'd once been a ranch hand for a powerful man in the territory. How one bad deal had cost him everything. He'd been moving from town to town, looking for work, for kindness, maybe just for a reason to keep walking. Eli listened without judgment. The old man's voice trembled with regret but carried wisdom, the kind you only earn by losing what matters most. By the time they reached the creek, the sky had turned purple and gold. Eli built a small fire while George warmed his hands beside it. The smell of coffee filled the air, and for the first time in a long time, George smiled like a man who felt seen. "Funny thing," George murmured. "When you get old, you stop expecting people to notice you. You just become part of the road, something folks pass by on their way to somewhere better." Eli handed him a tin cup of coffee. "Maybe the road's trying to lead you somewhere better too, George." George looked at the young cowboy, the dust on his face, the kindness in his eyes, and felt something stir in his chest he thought was long gone. "Hope. You remind me of someone," he said softly. "Someone I lost." Eli smiled faintly. "Maybe I was sent to remind you not everyone's lost, old-timer." The night deepened and the fire crackled low. Eli leaned against his saddle, staring up at the stars. George dozed off beside the flames, his face peaceful for the first time in days. But far off in the direction they'd come, a group of riders thundered down the road. Men in polished coats, carrying lanterns and rifles. They weren't out for cattle. They were searching for someone. By morning, Eli woke to the sound of approaching hooves. The old man was still sleeping, Eli stood, his hand drifting near his revolver out of habit. A man in a fine black coat rode forward, his badge glinting in the sun, the governor of Wyoming Territory himself. "Morning, son," the governor said, scanning the area. "We're looking for someone. An old man. Travels on foot, might be wearing a gray coat." Eli stiffened. He looked toward George, still sleeping near the fire. "What's he done?" The governor's jaw tightened. "Nothing wrong. He's my father." The words hit like a gunshot through the still morning air. Eli turned toward the sleeping man, disbelief spreading over his face. The man everyone ignored, the ragged stranger by the road, was the governor's own blood. The governor dismounted, his eyes wet. "We've been looking for him for weeks. He walked out after we argued. Said he was tired of power, tired of people who forgot what simple kindness was." He looked at Eli. "You found him?" Eli nodded slowly. "He found me, maybe. Just didn't know it yet." The governor knelt beside his father, voice breaking. "Pop, I'm sorry." George's eyes fluttered open. For a moment he looked lost, then saw his son. The man he'd raised. The man he'd watched become too busy for the people who built him. His lips trembled and tears cut through the dust on his face. "I wasn't lost," George whispered. "Just needed to see if there was still good left out. Here." He turned to Eli and smiled faintly. "Guess there is." Eli stepped back, letting father and son embrace under the morning sun. The wind carried the scent of sage and smoke, and something else. Something clean. Redemption. The governor stood after a while, gripping Eli's hand. "Son, you don't know what this means to me." Eli smiled. "Just did what was right." George looked at him one last time. "You keep doing that, boy. The world needs more folks like you." As the governor's men rode off with George safely on a horse, Eli watched until they vanished into the dust. He turned back toward the endless road, adjusting his hat. Somewhere out there, someone else might need help, and Eli Carter wasn't the kind to ride past. He mounted Daisy and whispered, "Let's go, girl. There's always another soul to save." The horse snorted, and together they rode toward the horizon, where the sun rose like a promise. And for everyone watching their story unfold on the screen, Eli's voice echoed softly at the end.